What's up, boxing fans? This is TVE Boxing back at you again. All right, so it looks like we have a fight. It looks like Gary Russell has accepted the $1.5 million to fight Devin Haney, and I guess now it's just a matter of working out a date. Uh, I'm hoping, and then we're gonna see this fight. Okay, so let's talk about this fight, and and talk about who should win or who will lose. Uh, how we got to this fight in the first place, and a couple other things. So let's chop this up and see what we can come up with. All right. So Gary Russell backs himself into a corner, calling out Crawford, falling into Devin Haney's trap. So it looks like Russell has been calling out Crawford for the past couple of months now, several weeks to a couple of months. Basically, a publicity stunt because that fight will never happen. Crawford responded one time about the story that Russell was telling about him, and to set the record straight. And that's been it. He hasn't responded to Gary Russell ever since, which I don't really blame him because there's nothing in it for him. It's just a publicity stunt for Gary Russell to big his name up, to get him more recognition. So I guess you can say the stunt has worked to a certain degree, and people start talking about Gary Russell and blah blah blah, and now it's to the point where I mean, along with calling out Crawford, Russell has also been calling out a host of other boxers, including fighters like Santa Cruz, Javante Davis, and Devin Haney. I mean, he specifically called out Devin Haney previously. So I guess Devin Haney saw the opportunity to strike like the Cobra, and so the Cobra Devin Haney struck, and accepted the offered Gary Russell the 1.5 million. He claimed that he would have accepted to fight Crawford. So this is where we are right now. All right, so we have a fight, supposedly, hopefully. Okay. All right, so I mean, I don't really think that that was the best move for Gary Russell. I think that you know he's been making a series of missteps in his career up to this point, and what should have been a promising career has basically turned out to be not much. Okay, so Gary Russell hasn't really accomplished that much at 26 pounds. His biggest claim to fame as a boxer basically is his loss to Lomachenko. Okay, and he came back though. He bounced back and beat Johnny Gonzalez for the 126-pound title, and ever since he's been basically uh, chasing a fight with Leo Santa Cruz. That he hasn't gotten at this point. Up until I mean, it's been 5 years, and Russell has been pretty inactive, fighting once a year or something to that effect, and hasn't really had many good fights. He could have stepped up at any point in his in his career and up to 130 pounds or even up to 135, but he hasn't done that. He has claimed that that's what he was going to do, but he keeps saying that he wants to fight with Leo Santa Cruz. So he's been chasing this fight with Leo Santa Cruz for 5 years, and hasn't been fighting, except for his mandatories. So he's been fighting once a year, and then all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, he says that he wants to fight Crawford. So the question one I have to ask is, so what have you done to deserve a fight with Crawford? I mean, you lost to Lomachenko, okay, and you haven't revenged that loss. You haven't been chasing Lomachenko, but all of a sudden, and you have to remember that when they fought at featherweight, Lomachenko was bigger than Gary Russell, okay. I mean, so. And then Lomachenko moved up. Lomachenko is now fighting a lightweight. Okay, so he hasn't really been chasing Lomachenko at all. as a matter of fact, he has said on more than one occasion that he was going to leave that fight to the end of his career, which at around 32 years old now, I think that's what he is. I mean, this is effectively, he's moving in that direction, which you can say this is toward the end of his career. So, but still, he hasn't been. He's still saying the same thing, that Lomachenko fight is going to be to the end of his career, whenever that is going to be. I mean, so basically he's pushing the Lomachenko fight way into the future somewhere where no one knows anything about that fight happening. Basically, from what I can see, he's basically saying that fight is never going to happen. Okay, so but here we are, in his shenanigans that he's been pulling in the last couple of weeks. He has landed a fight with Devin Haney. Now, my headline is that Gary Russell backed himself into a corner, calling out Crawford, and falls into Devin Haney's trap. But who's to say that it isn't Haney that has fallen into Gary Russell's trap? You could look at it like that as well. I mean, depending on perspective, right? So, if you was to be if I'm Gary Russell, or if you're Gary Russell, and the way he's been talking about how he's gonna spank Haney, you can say, well, okay, rising future superstar Devin Haney has fallen into Gary Russell's trap. I know I've been, so they're gonna have a fight. So I mean, there's a lot to lose for both fighters. Probably more for Gary Russell. But then again, it depends on how you look at it, because I mean he is moving up to fight a big man. So a lot of people are going to say, well, he should have, even though Haney doesn't have the experience, he's still, he's a big man and he beat the little man. That's the way it's supposed to be. So if Haney wins, so maybe it's not that much for Russell in that sense, but in the sense of career momentum, it's a big loss for him if he's beaten by Haney. I mean, and all this, and then the problem again is that Russell has been building up expectations and talking a lot of been running his mouth and talking a lot of crap. So he can do this, he can do that, he's this, he's the best, he's this, blah blah blah. So with all that talk that Russell has been doing, he's gonna have to back it up. And if he doesn't back it up, I mean, he could lose to Haney and still have his respect, but he has to give Haney a very good fight. He can't go up there and get stopped by Haney. If Haney stopped him, I think his career is over, effectively, because all that talk would have gotten him, nowhere. And then, to go after all this talk and then lose to Haney, it's not a good look. Even though, again, you can say, well, it's a little man daring to be great, going up against a big man. And basically, with all the advantages that Haney have, he should win this fight. I mean, he got the height, the reach, the youth, the technique. Okay, everything is basically in Haney's is in Haney's favor to beat Russell. I mean, Russell, you can say that Russell have the experience, but again, I think his experience is overrated. And at this point in his career, even though he has good skills, I mean, I don't see him as Russell has good defensive skills in terms of blocking, not slipping. Okay, I don't see him as a guy who has good upper body movement where he slips a lot of punches that way. He does have good defensive technique in terms of blocking punches. Okay, so he's good at that. So his defense is, it's not the best, but it's effective. Okay, to a certain degree, depending on who he's fighting. Okay, if he's fighting somebody like a Lomachenko or a Devin Haney, I don't think that defense is going to be as effective as if he's fighting someone that's coming straight at him and they just, in the pocket, and they both, just shooting punches from the pocket. And, there he can block and, work the body, and, he can use his hand speed. But against a fighter who has good foot movement and who can move and give him angles, that, his technique is not that effective against a fighter like that. And we saw that against Lomachenko. Okay, and so I'm looking to see something similar against Haney. I think that Haney, has good foot movement. Uh, you know, his speed is good, exceptional speed. Uh, he has the fundamentals down. Jab. You know, use work off the jab. Okay, his power is not overwhelming, but it's enough. Okay, and he has demonstrated one punch knockout power at certain point in one or two of a couple of his fights. So, in one particular fight that I saw. So, I mean, he's not a go in there and knock him out one punch guy. I mean, after accumulation of punches, he could knock out with one punch. So, all in all, this should be a good fight. A good test for both of these combatants, Gary Russell and Devin Haney. We can, kind of gauge where they are at this point in their respective careers. Okay, so also we will see, depending on how Gary Russell perform in this fight, we will see whether or not, his desire to challenge Crawford was just a pipe dream, or had some kind of basis in reality, where we can say, okay, yeah, it looked like Gary Russell have the skills to actually go up against Crawford. But in order for us to make that kind of judgment, he not only has to have a great fight against Devin Haney, he would have to beat Devin Haney. Okay, for me in particular, and for most people, I would believe, to think that he had a chance against Crawford. I mean, if he loses against Haney, I mean, there's no way we couldn't say, okay, yeah, he could have, done something to Crawford. Which I don't really think most people expect, him to fight Crawford anyway. Because, like I said, that was just a publicity stunt, and it actually worked for him. So now he has a fight with Devin Haney at welterweight. At lightweight. Someone he had called out on more than one occasion previously. So, now he has the fight that he had called for, and one of the fights that he's called for at lightweight, no less. And so we should see, how Gary Russell is gonna actually perform. And so it should be an interesting fight. I'm looking forward to it. A lot of people are looking forward to it, and hopefully, this fight actually happens for Gary Russell, and Devin Haney. So let's see what happens. This is TBE. That's all I have for right now. I'm out.